If you're in a long-distance relationship, you already know the truth. The hardest part isn't the time zones or the missed calls or the waiting. It's the loneliness that hits you when you least expect it. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're diving into something real and unfiltered. How to deal with loneliness in a long-distance relationship. Not from theory, not from random advice, but from real situations, real psychology, and real emotional experience. Because loneliness doesn't mean your relationship is weak. It means you care deeply. So stay with me till the end, because this episode might change the way you see distance, emotions, and connection. Forever. Let's begin.
Long-distance relationships. I mean, if you're in one, you know the deal.
Yeah.
The time zones, the flights, all those video calls, and maybe the worst part, that really deep, heavy feeling of loneliness, that sense of disconnection. It just tests you.
It absolutely does. But here's the really interesting thing we found in the sources for this deep dive. They don't just see LDRs as this, purely negative thing. They see the hardship, of course, but they insist these experiences can be transformed. So our mission today is to cut through that stress and give you some simple, powerful ways to change this phase from just a test of endurance into something that actually builds incredible strength.
I love that framing. So we're not just surviving the distance, we're learning to thrive in it. Okay, so we're going to take you on a journey. We'll start with the hardest part, right? The internal emotional stuff. Then we'll move into actual actionable communication tactics and then finish up with that long-term vision that, keeps hope alive.
Let's start right there at that emotional core, because that's where the damage usually begins.
Okay, so let's unpack this. When people feel lonely, their first instinct is, well, it's panic, right? They try to fix the distance or they blame themselves. But the foundational step, according to all the research, is to just accept the feeling itself. You have to stop judging yourself for being lonely.
And that is the shockwave insight right there. Most people think loneliness in a relationship is a sign of failure. They think if we were really connected, I wouldn't feel this way. But our sources just flip that completely. Loneliness doesn't mean your relationship is weak. It's actually proof that you care deeply. It just means you miss them. And that missing is a really powerful, positive sign of your bond.
Wow. Okay, that's a huge mind shift.
Yeah.
So if I accept that this feeling is normal, that it's just a side effect of loving someone, how does that help me? Practically. I mean, doesn't accepting it just make me sadder?
It's the opposite, actually. By reframing it, you immediately shut down that negative self-talk. When you fight the loneliness, you build up stress, and that stress comes out as irritability or resentment toward your partner. But if you just take a breath and tell yourself, it's okay to feel this, I feel this because I love them, you cut that stress way down.
So it stops the negativity from poisoning everything else.
Yeah.
It turns the feeling from like an enemy into just a messenger.
Exactly. The key is just letting yourself feel it without attaching all that shame or fear to it. It's a moment of validation. You give yourself permission to grieve their absence, and that emotional acceptance gets you ready for the next, more actionable steps.
Okay, so our internal house is in order, and now we move to external security. The research suggests that one of the biggest drivers of that crippling loneliness is just uncertainty. When will I hear from them next? How often should we talk? That randomness is just exhausting.
It's so exhausting. Your brain spends the entire day checking your phone, checking the clock, and the sources all show that the solution is to create a comforting, predictable routine. And this isn't about control or micromanagement. It's about getting rid of the anxiety of the unknown. It's about creating these little anchors of connection.
That's so critical, especially when you have crazy time zones to deal with. A routine helps manage those gaps. So what are the specific actionable steps the sources recommend for building this?
They suggest a kind of tiered structure. You start with high frequency but low demand contact. So every day, a really short morning text, a good night voice note. These are non-negotiable bookends for your day. They just confirm you're there for each other without needing a whole hour-long conversation.
I like that. Low demand. It respects that you both have separate busy lives, and you scale it up from there.
Right. The next layer is maybe a quick 10-minute video call. Not every single day, but maybe every other day, just to see their face, connect the voice to the visual. And then you layer on the deeper stuff, a weekly deep conversation to really check in emotionally, and maybe say a monthly virtual date night where you intentionally do something fun and break the routine.
That's a really solid structure. The relief you'd get from that predictability is huge.
Yeah.
If you know you have a video call Tuesday at 7, you don't spend all of Monday and Tuesday mornings stressing about it. The distance just feels lighter.
And that dependability builds psychological safety, which is absolutely essential for surviving the distance without burning out.
Speaking of burnout, here's where it gets really interesting, kind of counterintuitive. When we do finally get to talk, we fall into this trap of only sharing the highlights.
Mm-hmm.
The big promotion, the huge fight with a coworker. But the sources argue that real closeness comes from the small, ordinary moments.
That's what we call the distinction between performance and presence. Performance is sharing the highlights because you expect a big reaction. Wow, that's amazing. But if you only talk about the big achievements and crises, you lose the texture of a shared life. You sort of become a consultant on their life events, not a partner who's living in their world with them.
That makes perfect sense. The highlights feel exciting, but they can actually create distance because they focus on the event, not the person. So how do we actually do that? If I start texting my partner a picture of my Tuesday breakfast, aren't they just going to be bored?
Not if you frame it right. I mean, intimacy is about sharing context. It's saying, hey, this is the mug I use every morning, or I had this funny little moment with the barista today. Sharing a photo of your messy desk, sending a quick voice note about a small win, or even just a tiny frustration at the grocery store. These are the details that make up real in-person relationships.
Right, the mundane stuff that we usually just gloss over because we think it's too trivial for a precious long-distance call.
But that's where love grows, in those small details. Distance can't stop that kind of connection. When you share those little bits, you're inviting them to live alongside you for a moment, and that's what sustains intimacy.
Okay, let's pivot a little to something equally crucial. Independence. We've fixed the communication gaps. But what about all that time in between? Loneliness gets really bad when your entire emotional world depends on a partner who's thousands of miles away.
That dependence turns the relationship into this fragile anchor. If your only source of joy is that one weekly video call, well, the other 6 days are just filled with anxiety and waiting.
And here's the surprising fact our source material really drives home. The solution to LDR loneliness is to become more independent, not less. The goal is to build a life that you genuinely enjoy on its own terms, even while you're deeply in love.
And this takes real intentional action. We're talking about starting that fitness habit you've been putting off, or, learning a new skill just for you, spending dedicated time with your friends, working on your own personal goals.
And I know the fear that comes with this.
Mm-hmm.
You might be listening and thinking, if I get too independent, won't we drift apart?
That's the fear, but the reality is the exact opposite. When your life is meaningful on its own, the relationship transforms. It stops being this life support system that has to carry all your emotional needs, and it becomes this incredible source of pure joy. You're together because you want to be, not because you need them to validate you. You come to your partner as a whole person, and that just makes the bond stronger.
That's a much healthier foundation. Okay, let's move into some tactical tools, creative ways to bridge that physical gap. Technology can get a bad rap, but for an LDR, it's a lifeline. We just have to use it creatively, beyond just basic calls.
Right, absolutely. We need to use technology to simulate a shared space, a shared experience.
So that means getting creative with things you do at the same time. Watch a movie or play a game together online. While you're on a video call, send surprise voice notes during the day. Not just the goodnight ones, but like unexpected little audio messages that feel immediate. Share playlists or podcasts, and then you could talk about what you both heard just minutes apart. Even simple things like using couple apps for shared journals or countdowns, it maintains that sense of an active shared life.
And the psychological value of those small digital moments is huge. They fight that feeling of living in completely separate worlds. They create these little pockets of emotional closeness that really add up.
Which leads us to maybe the most important tool of all, emotional honesty. And this brings up a big question. If someone is doing all this stuff, why would they still hide their loneliness when it creeps back in?
Because they're afraid of being judged. They fear sounding needy or vulnerable, especially after they've worked so hard to be independent and have a routine. But the sources are clear. Mature communication means you have to drop the hints and just be direct.
So if you're feeling low, you don't hint about it or pick a fight to get attention. You build trust by being vulnerable and honest. Our sources even provide the direct phrasing, which is so simple. Hey, I've been feeling a little lonely lately. I just wanted to share it with you.
That direct, non-judgmental delivery is everything. It shows you trust them. And let me assure you, a mature partner will not judge you for having a human emotion. They'll listen, they'll understand, and they'll offer support. And that just reinforces that you two are a team against the distance.
We've covered the present, the daily stuff, but the last piece of this puzzle is the future. Uncertainty about the future makes loneliness so much worse because the distance feels permanent, infinite, and the cure for that is concrete planning.
Planning is hope in action. It really doesn't matter if the plan is small or massive. What matters is that the relationship has a visible path forward. You need to plan the next meeting, even if it's 6 months from now. Give yourself something tangible to count down to.
And this includes scaling up, right? Talk about small trip ideas for next year. Discuss long-term goals and, most importantly, build a visible timeline to actually close the distance for good.
Whether that timeline is 1 year or 5 years, just having that structure reduces the existential dread that can come with LDRs. That shared vision confirms that this is a temporary hurdle, not a permanent state of being.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Having something concrete to look forward to, a clear idea of when the distance ends or when you'll see each other next, it brings immediate, sustainable hope. And hope is the ultimate antidote to loneliness.
To wrap this all up, the final picture our sources paint is really clear. LDRs are not easy, but they are incredibly powerful forging experiences. If you're struggling with loneliness, just remember that feeling, it is not a flaw. It's a sign of profound attachment. You and your partner are learning to love through extraordinary circumstances, and that builds incredible resilience.
Absolutely. So your core takeaways: accept the emotion, build a routine, share the small everyday details, nurture your own joyful, separate life, and always plan for the future.
And since these sources all emphasize that LDRs build unique strength and that loneliness just means you care deeply, consider this as a final thought to mull over. If navigating this kind of prolonged distance forces you to be radically honest with your partner and with yourself, what form of radical self-trust might only be developed through this exact experience? It's something to explore.
If today's episode helped you feel understood, supported, or even a little less alone, hit like and subscribe this channel and share this video with someone who needs this message today.